First thing is, don't be surprised if there are tensions. When you start a new church plant, it's naturally going to cause people who are already working hard in that area to be concerned, anxious, worried. They're all trying desperately to get the limited resource they've got to make it work. And so if you come, it will inevitably make them feel fearful of losing people, and they're already struggling. So I think one of the first things is don't be surprised. I've seen planters engage really well with the ministers around and it go bad. I've seen planters engage really badly with the ministers around and it goes bad. I just think it's part of the reality of planting a church in a context where everyone else is struggling. It's going to happen. Don't overread it. Don't read it as some kind of terrible evil. It's quite understandable. It's quite normal that an established church would be concerned. You're going to start a ministry that will be new and fresh with lots of young people, almost certainly, and that will feel like the going concern. Established churches can't compete with that. They will naturally feel tension. Don't overread it. Don't kind of moralise it. Don't turn it into some evil thing. I'd say that's the first couple of thoughts there. Don't let it breed your own insecurities. One of the interesting things I think can happen for planters is that we want to create a narrative to make our church position itself in an attractive way, and that narrative can be where the church that's doing it, no one else has been. And so the danger is, as you come into a new context and there's some tensions around you, you can actually use that inadvertently, inappropriately, to create a narrative around your own church to make it more attractive in your own mind and for others, and fuel the very problem. So beware of the insecurities that can feed on you wanting to position your church as the saviour of this area, the great new work. That will just make things worse. I'd say to be careful about people who come to you from other churches. Don't overread their critique. They'll always come to you with a critique of the other churches, because that's what's justified their move, and they need it to justify their move. And so be careful not to overread what they're saying, and so foster a kind of a culture of gossip about other churches. And practice sending them back. Now, we have done that over the years. We've encouraged people to either go back to their church if it's a Bible teaching church, or at the very least, make sure that those who have come to you from other places go back and talk to their pastor about their decision.
Can I ask you, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you've checked with the previous pastor about somebody coming into the church? Do you think that's a practice you should do?
Yeah, depending on who the pastors are in your relationship. So I did it a month ago. We've just noticed a couple of families have come from a local church that we're keen to support and help. And so, not in our denomination, other denominational church setting. So I rang the senior guy there and said, were you aware? He was of some, but not others. And I said, look, we'll work through our pastoral context to get them to talk to him so that he can have the conversation properly. I don't think you can make people not come, but you can, although I have said to some people, go back, what are you doing here? But if they want to keep coming, it's a free country, of course. But I want to make sure they do the pastoral conversations well with their church that they're thinking of leaving. Yeah.
And what about the relationship then between yourself and other ministers? How have you found managing that as a tension? You said not to overread it, but obviously you've got to manage it to some degree. What are some of the ways you've tried to do that?
Well, again, I don't know that I'm the great expert in this, but I met with as many ministers as I could. Before we planted, I came up here and actually asked the local churches whether they thought there was a need for this kind of new church plant. And every minister I spoke to at that stage said yes. And so I worked to make sure we were partnering with them. But having started, the reality of a new church with a new energy caused friction and tensions and difficulties. It was just inevitable. We met with all the Anglican ministers on the Central Coast, and there was, don't overread the problem of friction, but sometimes there is a real reason for the friction that's beyond your control. There is a a different read theologically of what church is and what ministry should look like. And so if you come with a particular style of church, it will cause others to feel anxious for wrong reasons as well. It's quite a mix. I think the last thought I'd add is to be aware of your cultural network context. So planning a church in a country town of 20, 30,000 people is a very different cultural context than planning a church in suburban Melbourne or inner city Melbourne, where the fraternal won't be very strong, people won't know each other very well, and it's not, I think, as essential for you to do a lot of work across all the networks if you plan in a inner city context. But if you plan in a context of a tighter social network, you've got to pay much more attention to those relationships.